this is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
When you start a journey, you do so with hope and idealism that success is within your grasp. You find joy in the small successes that carry you to the next day, believing you are on the right track and your mission is just. Then reality slams you in the head, and that hope is replaced with fear and doubt. Your wide eyes close, and you second-guess every move you have made. The future, which was once crystal clear, is now clouded over. Survival becomes your default setting. Having faith that your path has been predetermined, you put one foot in front of the other, hoping that the future is still bright, but just seen through a different lens. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Falaice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and now you can join. And of course, follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to. Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as retired police officers, and we certainly don't trust anybody as podcasters, but we do trust the guys over there at Toyota Hackensack. So go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car.
Okay, so I think what we should do first off the bat is not to scare the audience, hearing my voice and seeing us playing musical chairs here.
Well, as you notice, I was sitting in that chair on the intro, but then I came over here. But there's a very good reason for it, though. I think this is interesting.
There certainly is. It's going to be a very different show, I feel.
Well, this is the close of season 4. You know, we had to do something different. I don't think it was appropriate. We usually do a party, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it was appropriate this year. I think it's better that you and I sit in here, since between you, I, and Andrew have spent the most time in this studio to sit, and I think it's best that we just reflect.
Hallowed ground, I feel.
But tonight I'm in the hot seat.
And I think you're in for it. And just to let the audience know, both viewers and listeners, when you tasked me with this assignment, you were very clear, and you said, do not tell me the questions. So you don't know anything that you're going to be asked.
I don't know any of this, and there's a couple reasons. Number one, I think it plays better on camera. Number two, sitting in that seat as long as I have, I think that I may have lost a little bit of, even though I'm a guest on a lot of shows, I may have lost a little bit of sympathy or empathy for the person sitting in this chair. So that's why I didn't want to see any. I want them fired at me. I don't want to prepare. I just, give the more authentic answer as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to work. It's going to be true, real, raw. We're going to hit the highs and lows.
Yeah, there was both.
Absolutely.
There was both this year.
So I think we're going to get started right away. And as you know, each week we take a social media question from our audience. And when I saw this one, I knew it was right up your alley. So the handle here, this comes from Paleface Irish Curse. And when you give me access to the Suffering Podcast inbox, that one just jumped right out at me.
Maybe it might be mine.
I don't know. But it resonated with me right off the bat. And plus, it's a great question. So Paleface Irish Curse writes, how do you tell the difference between who is a true friend versus just an acquaintance? Kevin, to you.
Wow. Okay. So I just had something like this. I'm known to shit my pants probably once or twice a month. It happens all the time. I am not immune to it. Therefore, I have a lot of sympathy when people do it. There's a couple good answers to this, but this is my version of the answer.
Yeah.
A good friend, let's say I'm sick, I'm hurt, a good friend, without question, will clean you up, get you a new pair of drawers, and put you out. I have some people, and my circle, you know my circle. My circle is really super small. And in my circle, and I'm not there, so there's a couple, I heard it put this way, and I'm kind of stealing this. There are people in your life who you can call up between 9 to 5. They're like your outer rim. And you can call them 9 to 5, and they will be there for you, whatever you need. But after 5, I got to do this, I got to do that. Then there are that other group of people that if I call them up at 3 a.m., And I say, hey, listen, man, I need you. I need you. They're already getting their pants on.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting their tools. They're getting a shovel because they're assuming that you're going to bury a body. That's the friends that I have. And that's how I know that those people are part of my inner circle. I was just explaining this to somebody today. I was on the phone with somebody, and I said, my inner circle of friends would lay down in traffic for me, and I would do the same for them. There's that great scene in The Town with Ben Affleck.
Oh, yeah.
That's the best scene ever. And Ben Affleck comes in, and Jeremy Renner's sitting on the chair, and he is, I need your help. I can't tell you what it is. I can't tell you what it's for, but we're going to hurt some people. And he just calmly, who's driving?
Absolutely.
And that's where you know you have a true friend. And I don't devalue the people who are on the outer rim because they have their own responsibilities. They have their own things to take care of. But those people in my life, we were just invited to a party.
Yeah.
And it's like at 8:00 at night. I'm in bed at 8:30, but I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there because that's part of my inner circle. Listen, having true friends comes with debit. It does. It comes with debit, but you pay that debit gladly because the returns are so much better.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it goes along the same lines as what you're saying, but there are people in life. This is not my line, but it's been said. People come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
It's good.
And sometimes it can be one or it can be all three. So people that come into my life for a season, I always say it's a reason. And some I hope will be there for a lifetime. I've had people in and out, but the true friends for me are the ones that come to your aid when nobody's looking.
And not looking for any type of pomp and circumstance.
Nothing in it for themselves. They put themselves out there, and you might even know that you might not even know that they're defending you or they're doing something for you or they're helping you, all in the back scenes, and they don't want anything in return.
And also one caveat to add to all this is my true friends can say whatever the fuck they want to me. All right. And if they get me riled up a little bit, that's good. That's good. But I never hold it against them.
Yeah.
Where there are certain people in my life, if they tell me something I don't want to hear, I'm going to tell them, go fuck yourself, get the fuck away from me, and don't ever talk to me again. But my close personal friends, they can say whatever the fuck they want. And I'll sit there and I'll, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right.
And you'll give it back in kind.
I'll give it back. If anybody ever saw our text messages in our group, it's pretty brutal.
Oh, yeah. And listen, I don't mind being the Lou Costello.
But listen, I made one today. You weren't the girl.
I wasn't the girl.
You weren't, but it was still good. I'm not going to ruin it because that is definitely going to be an Instagram live.
That one's going to get some views, I feel. So you'll have to check out the Suffering Podcast, the IG account, as well as Real Kevin Donaldson,
which was just fixed tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Meta, for going down on us.
Yeah, and
not in a good way.
Thank you for raising my blood pressure right before showtime.
Yeah,
that was fun.
So I want to thank our audience. Thank you, Paleface Irish Curse. Keep sending in your social media questions for a chance to get them on the air. So let's get into it, Kevin.
What do you got for me?
So
listen, if you ask what size I'm packing downstairs, I might just jump over the table. I'm just going to warn you.
Yeah, I was cautioned, and I upped my life insurance policy prior to coming.
It's embarrassing saying 3 inches.
And I'll say, listen, I'll take the body over disposing the soiled underpants if there's an option.
Everybody shits their pants.
So
it's listen, there's a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
There's birth, there's taxes, there's death, but there's also shit in your pants.
There's also shitting.
Do not discount that.
And it made it in the episode very quick. I think we didn't hit 1:30 and we're in on it.
Oh, yeah. So that's called the grab.
Yeah.
That's called the grab.
Yeah, well, that one got it. And if that phone rings at night, I'm please be the body. Please be the body. Please be the body.
Tom, bring some toilet paper. I got a problem.
So as we sit here today, this being episode 213.
Mm-hmm. Crazy.
And, you've had a lot of accomplishments. And before we talk about them this year, we had some red letter days, some black letter days. Let's give them a little bit of background, maybe something that they don't necessarily know about you but maybe the beginnings. To talk about the past season, go back to the beginning.
Of season 4 specifically?
I'm saying from the very beginning, talking about season 1. So when you set out, and the reason I say that is because we're at 213 episodes.
December 20th, 2020.
2020 is when you started this. Now, my first question is, when you set out episode number 1, what was your expectation of where it would be going?
Most people who start a podcast think that they're going to step in the shoes of Joe Rogan or Mr. Ballin or Sean Ryan or Russell Brand's another one who's come to prominence. They're not. There's 3 reasons. I learned this a long time ago. There's 3 reasons why somebody starts a podcast. There's mission, message, and money. And you know better than anybody, being involved with this for over a year now, that if you're in it for the money, man, you're going to be sorely disappointed because the money's not there.
Right.
It's more like talk therapy. It's more long form conversation. So when I started, I want to say that you got to go back to about August 2020. We're just coming out of lockdown. And during lockdown, I did a lot of audiobooks. Because I was constantly moving. I couldn't sit still. I never can sit still.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to a lot of audiobooks. I was listening to a lot of podcasts. And I thought, these people, they really, they seem to further their education the more people they speak to. And I thought that was very interesting. It wasn't to be famous. It was my constant pursuit of learning. I would like to, and I always wanted to have a guest, even though on the first couple I didn't. I always wanted to have a guest because I can grab something from that guest. I can learn something. I can grab that piece of information and internalize it if it fits me or if it's something that I want to pursue. And sitting in front of the microphone first time, like I had everything set up and, God, if you go back, I did all this research and I think I went on Rockville Audio and they had these kits, 4 microphones, 4 arms. And then one day, I dumpster dived for the table, which I rebuilt. I put a big lightning bolt in the beginning, in the middle of the table with black spray paint and stuff. Tried to make it look as nice and professional. And then there was the place to record. So the downstairs, I took over half of my kids' playroom downstairs. And I'm doing all this stuff, sound deadening and all that stuff. And I got moving blankets from Harbor Freight. And I have a drop ceiling down there. And I hung them up from the drop ceiling. I clamped them on. And so you're nice. And it was actually sound-wise, it was really good. So I get my laptop up. I have my audio mixer over here. And I do the whole episode. I'm like, why the hell does that sound tinny? What the hell's going on here? I forgot to plug in the sound mixer to the computer.
That's actually some of the greatest parts, right? So, we're film fans. We have some overlap there. And if you think of some of the greatest movies or your favorite shows or things like that, one comes to mind is Cannonball Run.
Oh, God. Dom DeLuise and Burt Reynolds are priceless together.
Absolutely. And you have what I think is one of the great parts of the film is they were one of the first ones to include blooper reels, right?
Yeah.
So you had, Dom DeLuise and Dean Martin and these bleeds. He had a faux pas when he said rosary bleeds instead of beads. And it just, do you think there's any bloopers back in the day that are like in the vault somewhere that you can remember? Even if it's not from season 1, maybe it's up to now.
Oh, so, yeah. And it has to do with Andrew. Okay. It actually has to do with Katia, Andrew's lovely wife. Who is a part of our family as well,
Yeah.
So Katia comes in, and it was like the suffering of an immigrant or something like that. And Katia and Mike would feed into this bullshit all the time. And I'm sitting here, and I'm doing 17 different things at once when I was up because I'm looking at the audio, making sure everybody's coming in right, trying to stay to the script, and trying to do this, and I'm all over the place. And Mike and Katia get in this 20-minute conversation about. I think it was about vaginas. And I'm like, what? And it had nothing to do, like immigrants' vaginas are not any different than American vaginas. And it was like, I'm like, what? I remember actually saying in the episode, well, I got to cut all that shit out because that don't play.
Yeah.
And the episode was way over an hour, which, on audio, it doesn't really matter. But it was funny, and it's in the vault. It's in the vault somewhere. Maybe one day, if somebody was so inclined to go through the vault, they can listen to it.
That would be something.
But it's 20 minutes of lost footage that I couldn't air. It wasn't that I couldn't air it because of the content. It just didn't make sense to everything. Or Mike would do this thing. I got these 4 chairs. I bought these 4 chairs for the studio. And Mike had this way of moving the microphone back and leaning back. The motherfucker broke the chair. He broke the back of the chair, and I'm watching him every week, and each week he's going back further, and I'm like, that's not a reclining chair. What are you doing?
It's going to become one, lazy boy.
And that's what happened. And he would do this thing, and it would, but I got good at editing audio. He would.
Those things.
And it would drive me up a wall, and or he would go this close to the microphone, right?
A cross between the Lion King and an obscene phone call.
Then you had De Palma. And I used to go through every single episode with a fine-tooth comb and take out as many ums and ahs and try to make the guests sound as coherent. Try to make the hurricane himself, Mike De Palma, he must have said and ah 5 million times.
Yeah.
And taking that out. And since he was nervous. Okay, he was nervous, and when he comes in here, that is not the same hurricane that was in on episode 17.
Don't let him fool you. He's an intelligent man.
He's incredibly intelligent.
Underestimate that man, and you'll find out.
Well, I've said it for years with Mike he's the Foster Brooks. Okay, and if you don't know who Foster Brooks is, Foster Brooks was a comedian who played a drunk.
Yeah,
Foster Brooks never drank.
Did it to a T. The Dean Martin specials at night.
It was wonderful. And that's Mike De Palma. So Mike's superpower, if Mike had a superpower, it was to intentionally, and he doesn't do it purposely, he doesn't do it intentionally, but he makes people underestimate him, which I've always said for years that I love it when people underestimate me.
Oh, yeah.
Because I already have an advantage over you if you underestimate me.
Mm-hmm.
People knew I was an offensive lineman in football. Oh, you're just a dumb lineman. Well, no, I'm really not. But think that.
Yeah.
Go ahead and think that. So there was a lot of things. We laughed a lot, and there was Mike and I used to do this thing before we would record on Saturdays, and there was a bagel store, which
for sure.
We would go there. We would have our little pre-production meeting, have a bacon, egg, and cheese, and then we go in and record.
Mm-hmm.
Some days we would do a double. Some day, we just had fun with it, and then somewhere along the line, it just got serious because we started to gain traction.
Yeah.
And I missed that, because each step up, we were always trying to advance our position. And each step up, I would do something new to the studio. I'd put black curtains up, LED lights, this flag was up there. Trying to make it, because here was my thought process. I knew I wanted to have guests in there. They're coming down to my basement of my house, which I've had some killers in my house, some legitimate killers.
That had to take their shoes off.
That was a whole other thing. And I wanted them to feel, because when you step into this studio,
mm-hmm.
it's a professional studio.
Sure is.
And you up your game. You always play to the level of your surroundings. If this studio had garbage over here and you wouldn't look at it as favorably. So I always wanted to make the studio as professional looking. So when you went down into my studio, when it was set up, and I have pictures of it, it was camera ready.
Mm-hmm.
You put cameras up and we're ready to rock and roll, because that was always the plan. But it was just easier. It was more cost efficient in order to come up to A&J Media. But the shoes were hilarious.
I think, to your credit too, there's this. Of course, you speak about something cool. I got to speak about something nerdy and probably uninteresting. But there's this acronym, and it's in the programming world, and they call it the CICD pipeline. So it's C Charlie, I India, Charlie Delta, CICD. And
I'm trying to think what that is, because I know it.
What it stands for is constant improvement, constant development. and it goes in a loop. And I think like you with the beginnings of the podcast and where it is today, like you've embodied that without even knowing it, because like you're saying, you're adding something here, we're changing something there. And I think it's resulted in, I think obvious success.
I always knew it was a marathon.
Yeah.
I never expected it to be a sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And I treated it as such. When it started off with the moving blankets, didn't look very sexy in there, but as time moved on, especially when the lights were on and everything, it was real cool. It was a real nice, mellow environment. One, we had somebody in there. One of the things that I didn't like, and I was actually kind of pissed at this. We had a guy in there, and he's a big weed guy,
Mm-hmm.
and he's nervous, and he's like, "Hey, you mind if I do this?" And I thought he's going to just take like one hit, and you could smell weed. Take like one hit. He's smoking the damn thing through the whole thing. And he sounded like I was like he thought he was sounding better than he was. Like the weed was getting to him.
Yeah.
There's been those moments too where you just like, dude,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Come on, man. Let's go. We're trying to do something good here.
So there's one other element that I think would be interesting for the viewers and listeners to know. You mentioned the lightning bolt. And the lightning bolt is, it's on the emblem, the logo to this day. But the lightning bolt has a special significance to you, Kevin Donaldson.
It does. When I was a kid, I was scared to death of thunder and lightning. I was absolutely scared to death of it. It was a fear that was like crippling to me, where I would shake like that dog, that proverbial dog that didn't like thunder and lightning. And then that fear that got into me over time, I think I started to enjoy it because it was an escape for me. I didn't have the greatest childhood. And the fear I felt from thunder and lightning storms sort of, it cleared my mind. And when I used to train for football, I always had to lose weight for junior football, and I would go out and I would pick thunder and lightning storms to go run out at, and I would challenge God. I did have faith then, but I would challenge God.
Yeah.
Like, hey, come on, I'm here. Give it a shot. Come get me. And it was my form of overcoming my fear. And then when I was 13, I wasn't the most upstanding child. I took a needle and I researched in the library how to give yourself a tattoo. And I took a needle and India ink. And to this day, it's that right there on my forearm. I got that when I was 13. I did it to myself.
Yeah.
Covered it with a Band-Aid for the first 6 months. And one day I was sweating, the Band-Aid fell off, and that wasn't a good day to where my parents saw it. But out of all the tattoos that I've had and all the tattoos, that one means the most to me because it's even though it's little and it looks like I got it in prison, it means that I have overcome that fear. Now, if you take that and put it in context of how the rest of my life, it's overcoming fear after fear after fear after fear.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not afraid of much anymore, because I know that if you learn how to wrangle that fear, it can really be something powerful and it can propel you into success.
And hence the theme of the show, overcoming adversity, overcoming suffering to success. And, sometimes it's good to know the logo.
That is the genesis of the logo. So the original logo was without me and without Mike and I here. And this banner has always remained the same. The lettering has always remained the same. When we were moving forward, when we were moving on camera to be a little bit more visually stunning, I added our photos in here. And this actually is the first photo from episode 9 that Mike and I took together. As you can tell, we didn't really care about being camera ready. His hat's on backwards. He looks like he's got the howdy doody smile. And my beard, I look like Grizzly Adams.
No, but it works.
Yeah.
It works. That's the OG logo right there. And it still stands today.
I used to, as most people know, I wear glasses.
Mm-hmm.
I used to take the photos with my glasses on, because I would have to wear my glasses during the episode so I could see everything. A friend of mine, Charlie Cifarelli, said, take your glasses off and stand up you're hiding yourself. Take the hat off. And this was before I took the hat. He goes, take the hat off, take the glasses off, and show yourself. And I did. And I did after that for the remainder of the show.
And good advice.
It was good advice from him.
So flash forward now.
The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherry Alsop is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherry on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherry has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherry's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherry will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherry's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques, uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherry also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherry Alsop, go to sherryalsop.com. That's SherryAllsup.com.
2024 and season 4, we've had, like I said, black letter, red letter days. Professionally for you outside the podcast, you've had some successes, and I think you had your book released this year, February 11th, I believe, 2024 is when it was released.
Okay. I don't remember the date. I just know it was cold as hell in Chicago.
Yeah, sure was.
And Tom was gracious. You were gracious enough to come along, and that was fun. I mean, listen, we spent 12 hours in a car and stopped at that rest stop with a hole in the bathroom, but other than that, it was good.
Yeah. I do remember, and it was one social media post, and it was in the lobby at a hotel, and I can tell you, like I saw it just moments after, and I wasn't there for that exact moment, but when you held that in your hand in the lobby at a hotel, it was a smile and a sense of joy and accomplishment that I saw come over your face that, maybe people don't see it every day.
There was tears coming down there because at that moment, in much the same way the first episode, in that moment, it became real. Up until then, yes, there was a lot of hard work getting that book out.
Yeah.
But up until then, it was in the ether. It wasn't tangible.
It's a concept, right?
Exactly. And then once I had that in my hand, I'm like, and I had seen the book. I knew the book was delivered. I'd seen the book a couple days prior getting unpackaged. And I opened up the book and I'm like, oh my God, this is the product of my hard work. And I was overcome with emotion. I really was just overcome with emotion just to hold that book the first time. Then we went out and got that disgusting food.
We did. And we had a lot of truck stops, and it was a fun road trip. I have to say it was really fun. It was
corn nuts and beef jerky.
And it was a lot better when I figured out how to turn on the headlights of the rental car too.
Yeah, so Tom gets the rental car and we leave at like 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And we don't turn our headlights on until about 7. Wonder why we can't see the road.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking like it was words unspoken. I'm like, man, it's dark out here. And then the first place we stop, I go to turn the lights off, and I turned them on. I said, oh. Yeah. But yeah, over the course of this year and this season, you also have done public speaking. You've been out there in front of the New Jersey State PBA. You also had a viral clip on Jubilee Media. And I don't think we can discuss season 4 without at least touching a little bit on the Jubilee. Surrounded, 3.3 million views, I think, at this point.
Last I checked, it was almost at 3.5. It was almost at 3.5. Yeah, apparently I'm the Jubilee cop. So, as a matter of fact, when I was in Nashville for the PBA, more people came up. I'm standing there with a guy named Jay Dobbins. Mm-hmm. So if you don't know who Jay Dobbins is, Jay Dobbins infiltrated the Hells Angels. He was a special agent with the ATF. And he's written, I think he's got 5 or 6 books. I mean, he's a big name. And I knew Jay through a mutual friend, through Christy Howard. So I'm standing there, and we're at this event. Neither of us want to be there. And people are coming up to me. Hey, I saw you on TikTok. And then I watched a video with you and the criminals. Great. And look, everybody was very complimentary. Everybody was very, very complimentary. That was a little bit overwhelming experience because I'd never had whatever show. Prior to that was Soft White Underbelly. That's like 750,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
I'd never had anything like that. I didn't know what it brought. And what it brought was good. You know, I'm standing there at my day job and people are stopping and saying, hey, I saw you. Or the contractor's like, hey, I was flipping through TikTok. Or the kids that I coach, they have seen it too. And that's a little weird. It's a little strange because I've gotten recognized in the gym from Soft White Underbelly several times. I've gotten recognized on the street for that. But that was on a whole different level. Here was the downside of that. I was getting like 4 or 5 death threats a day because of that. And because people don't realize that there's some crazy people out in the internet.
Yeah.
Not everybody is of sound mind. And when you do something like that and it's that viral, people think they have an open communication with you. Like it's, I got so many messages that said, hey, I need to talk to you. Call me. Swear to God.
Wow.
Swear to God. I need to talk to you. Call me. I'm like, no, I really don't make it a point of calling random strangers.
Yeah.
I got a life. But people think they feel they know you, right?
Yeah.
And they don't. They don't. You know, I'm very similar to the way I am off camera, but you know, I'm a little bit more reserved and probably one of the shyest people you'll ever meet in your life.
That's a surprise to me.
Yeah. I'm you know, I go out into an environment that I don't know or feel comfortable. I'm in the corner.
Yeah. That is a new revelation. I've heard you say it once or twice before, and I started to look around the room. I said, we talking about the same guy?
I can turn it on.
Yeah.
I can turn it on and I can white knuckle through the uncomfortableness.
Mm-hmm. So, some other things in season 4. So, you know, and we have we have the elephant in the room that we'll definitely get to, but some of the highs for you. For season 4, are there any sort of standout episodes that come to mind? Because like I have like almost like a 5 or 6 episodes that just sort of come to mind. Anyone for you?
Well, when Clark Fredericks is on, and listen, I truly believe when people come in here, I am invested in their stories. I get to know them on a different level than just a normal phone call. Hi, hello, how are you? So I become connected to them. A couple of them, you know, starting from the very beginning, and I haven't done my research, so if I get this wrong, whether it's 3 or 4, please forgive me. But I know season 4 started off with Clark Fredericks. Clark's always a great interview, and he's always very giving. He's very comfortable behind a microphone. And there's Sherry Alsop. Sherry Alsop is the whole reason we demonetized the channel because it was the suffering of incest. Her story is just so horrific, and it was so important that money didn't matter, right? Again, not losing that same vision of the mission, message, and money. Money didn't matter, and you don't make much from YouTube anyway. Then there was John Collins.
John Collins is one that sticks out for me.
John Collins, he's just a cool dude, just very chill. Flew in on his own dime.
Yeah.
And sat here, and we had a fantastic conversation.
The one thing that stood out for me is, you know how somebody's the real deal? I mean, listen, going through Bud's training, you know, and 5, 6 hell weeks speaks to something about the man. But there are those that tell their story, but he told it with such humility that he was just doing, you know, this is what I was set out to do. You know, I was born a SEAL, and he didn't advertise his own fame, but he was able to tell that story. And that's an amazing, all the guests are great, but that's one that sticks out in my head. When you talk about Clark, those are Soft White Underbelly alumni. We also had Hasia.
We had Hasia, Seth Gale.
Yeah.
Who else do we have for Soft White?
Jersey
Mike. I forgot about Jersey Mike. And season 5, Matt Cox we're gonna revisit with him. Wait till you meet him. He's a scary motherfucker.
Yeah.
And he not physically. No. There's nothing physically scary about him.
And if anybody wants to see, if they look at Home Title Lock, Matt Cox is one of their, you know, they're like not celebrity endorsement, but he tells you how it's done. and he represents Home Title Lock. Not a sponsor.
It's the only time I ever walked out of a studio and checked my wallet.
And Michael Palazzo is another one sticks out.
That's
for me.
right. He was also Softlight. I forgot about that. He's a friend of Mike Dowd. So, you know, Mike is real good friends with Mark Leda from Softlight Underbelly. And then Mark was kind enough to mention me on Joe Rogan.
On Joe Rogan. Yeah.
I don't know if that was this season or not. I don't remember. But that was a big thing. And so if you ever think that podcasters' voices don't matter, obviously with the new election, we see how much podcasters' voice matter.
Sure.
But that was a huge wow moment for me. All right. So I got into work that day and I went out on the road and I came in and somebody said, "Oh, you're a celebrity." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, you were mentioned on Joe Rogan." I was like, "What?" And I said, who said that? And then my phone just went berserk. So I went and found it. It was like 63 minutes in to the Mark Leda, and they just mentioned my name. That's all they do. Next thing I know, I just started getting this flood of phone calls.
Yeah.
Posts coming out and say, "Hey, my boy was mentioned on Rogan." And it was so cool. It was so humbling for me. But at 63 minutes in, when you're fighting on YouTube to get 10 minutes of listen time.
For sure.
63 minutes in, and that many people picked that up. I was like, holy, this guy has got some power.
And he was very complimentary of you. He talked about not only the interview being a great interview, but your story and, you know, how your story is shared by other cops, other people that have been through trauma. So that's really a good one. That's to look at.
Well, so one thing about my story and is it's not unique. My story is not unique in any particular way. It might be the way I tell it, because it hurts every time I tell it. It does hurt. You know, it's easier over time, and I feel that every single time. You know, I feel it in my soul when I tell that stuff.
I can relate on a different level, and you know, people you introduced me to, and I was, you know, fortunate enough to become a guest on there. I had used a part of that in saying my story is as unique as it is universal.
So the funny thing is wherever we go together, because on your Instagram it's not your picture.
Maybe I'll change that.
Yeah, I think you need to change that because wherever we go, they're like, "This is my friend Tom Flynn." Oh, you're Tom Flynn.
Yes.
It happens everywhere we go. Oh, you're Tom Flynn.
Yeah. Or who the hell is this Tom Flynn guy? Right? Because I'm reposting and all that other stuff. But yeah, some other episodes that come to mind are Yvonne Elwood. Her story was great. You know, not a celebrity type thing, but just a really great story. There's gems all across season 4.
So stick with Yvonne Elwood. I'm in Parker, Arizona with Sherry also. And I get a call from Pat Elwood, Yvonne's wife or husband.
Great guy.
Yes. So I whenever I have a guest in here, especially ones that tell a very deep and dark story, I always make sure I check up on them. I did it with Yvonne. I said, "Hey, listen, just be aware that this could happen. You might have some aftershocks. You might have some nightmares. You're bringing it up. You're picking at that scab. It might not be totally healed." We try to bring people in here when they're totally healed, but it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
Just be aware of this. No, I'm okay. So when I got the call from Pat, now mind you, I can't talk in the classroom. Sherry's up there. She's teaching her block. I have to go out and I'm looking at the desert. It's 110 degrees out there in September. It was, I wasn't sweating because it's dry heat, but it was 110 degrees. These people who are sitting in the classroom in the air-conditioned class are wearing jackets and carrying blankets because their blood is so thin, it's like water.
Yeah.
But Yvonne had some difficulty post-show. And that shows that unless you're ready to face it, and listen, now she's in a much better place. And I'll talk to her occasionally. She's in a much better place. It just goes to show that when you bury things so deep, they have a way of coming out. So you have a choice. It's either you control how they come out or they're going to control you, and they're going to come out at the most inopportune times. And that's kind of what happened to Yvonne. And listen, it was a perfect storm, and there was a lot of background to that. But
yeah, there's another thing that sticks out about the guests, and these are the off-camera moments. There's, sort of like a post-show informal gathering. I would almost liken it to when we were on the job, like choir practice, right?
Yeah.
So you have season 4 guests, and there are gems of information and additional suffering that come out in the parking lot.
The parking lot conversations are always meaningful.
This would be like the MTV like confessional, right? Like it happens in the parking lot. We find out, certain information is like, holy smokes, like that is another layer of suffering that just didn't happen to make it in. But, it's true.
Well, so that's a weird thing about doing a show like this is some people have had such a awful life that at one point you got to hit the edit button.
Yeah.
You only got a limited amount of time to get this stuff out, and you're trying to tell a story that has a beginning, middle, and end, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to be a storyteller. You're not trying to tell a false narrative, but you're trying to get it through that's digestible to the audience. And it doesn't always come through when they just start throwing stuff at the wall. We've seen this before where at the end of, hey, listen, we're coming to the end of this thing here. And next thing you know, they're throwing out like 5 more pieces of suffering because they're trying to get it in. It'll come out. Listen, if you got more, we'll bring you in again. We've done it plenty of times.
For sure.
Yeah.
So as we progress, we know the date that we're all too familiar with, May 9th, 2024.
I got whacked boom boom on that day. Because on May 4th, my wife lost her father. And it was a rapid fire. It was a bad time.
And to show what kind of man you are, people may not realize this, and I'm not revealing anything out of school, is that I think, at least in my limited time that we've known each other, I see when you're in suffering and you suffer with purpose, whether it be in the church and the wake that day. The one thing I noticed, the first thing you were doing is you were helping someone at the funeral home move the lectern.
Yeah, that's me.
And just like being an usher at the church, you're there, like you're driven with purpose. And I think that runs concurrently with the suffering.
Some people are going to be shocked to hear this, but I am a deacon in our church. And deacon means to serve.
Yeah.
Right? And I learned from a guy named Jimmy Flanagan. And you didn't know Jimmy, but you know his wife, Pastor Dottie.
Yeah.
Jimmy taught me what it means. And Jimmy was just, he was a hardworking man. He was a construction guy. He just, that's how, that's his love language. And that's my love language. My love language is to serve. So when Jimmy passed, he had cancer and he passed. I continued to fill his shoes because he taught me right. He taught me how to do it, and I liked the way he did it. And it made me feel purposeful in order to serve the church that way. So I just stepped into his shoes, and sure enough, Pastor Adam comes up to me and says, "Would you be interested in that?" But he'll still check on me. He's like, "Are you still able to worship?" Even though I was like, "No, this is how I worship." And it was the same thing at the funeral. This gives me comfort in order to serve, and maybe it's a throwback from when I was a cop.
Yeah,
just to serve.
I feel that this is also something like as cops, wherever we join, like I've mentioned, the noble cause, and you got Bobby and Mike DePalma and all the other cops and first responders and vets that come in here. The desire, wherever it comes from, is to serve something bigger than ourselves. And this podcast, I think, is also emblematic of that, if you'd agree.
It is. You try to choose a. So here's the thing about guests, right? We've had some bigger name guests in here. It's not my favorite thing to do in the world.
Interesting.
I am not a person. I'm not an autograph seeker. I treat them very professionally when they're in here. I'm not a gawker. I'm not a star fucker. Some people, if you ever heard that one,
I have.
I'm here trying to listen to what they have to say. Here's the problem: the higher the profile person, the less they feel obligated to share because their story's been out there for so long.
Yeah.
I learned this, and listen, the guy's one of my great friends, and I'm not shitting on him at all, is Lee Roussan. So you had Lee Roussan play for the Giants in the 80s, 2 Super Bowl rings. We had him in very early on. Mike's brother Frank connected us, and Lee comes in. Now, if you take somebody like Lee, somebody has been promoting him his whole life, somebody outside. He's never had to self-promote. With podcasting, it's all self-promotion. It's all it is. You know, I'm putting a post out. You're putting a post out. And that's how the word gets around. So we know that game.
Yeah.
You take you get a celebrity in here. They have PR people to promote for them. And if they're not going to waste, and they pay money for their PR people, they're not going to waste money on their PR people for something as lowly as a podcast. You hope that their name is big enough for a grab. And that's what the hope is. But it rarely works out that way. What I really enjoy is the average, everyday person. Because, you know, like you had Jerry Cooney. Jerry Cooney came in there. Most people can't relate to Jerry Cooney other than his addiction. He was a superstar boxer.
Yeah.
Right? Other than his addiction, you know, I didn't live your life, you know. Meanwhile, people have more in common with Jerry Cooney than people might think. But I prefer the person who has lived an average life, the person who has dealt unhealthily with their failures. Not that I prefer them dealing with their failures unhealthily, but to get that stuff out, what they learned from it. If a bigger name comes, great, wonderful, awesome, but I'm not seeking it.
Yeah. There's a certain authenticity with the forgotten man, the forgotten woman, or somebody like just another face in the crowd. And sometimes their stories are gems. Somebody who's a celebrity, like you're saying, they have their story and it becomes rote. It becomes repetitive, and you're not getting sort of, and it's true, like they have a great story, but you're not getting that.
They're selling, not telling. So that was coined by Bobby Crudell.
Very well put.
They're selling, not telling. And you can tell that there's no soul behind their words.
Yeah.
At one point, there was probably soul behind their words, but they've said it so much that they just, it's almost like they don't believe it anymore. I prefer to stay clear of those people. But, you know, they'll come in from time to time. So I will always, but again, if you think about the reason why this whole thing was started, was I had a message, I had a voice, and I'm the average, ordinary people. So I resonate with the people who are average, ordinary, because if you look at the mark of a hero, right? Here is the definition. So most people, if I were to ask you what the definition of a hero is, throughout history, you know, all the books that you read about heroes, there's 3 characteristics of a hero: separation, initiation, and return. That's Joseph Campbell thing, Hero with 1,000 Faces.
Great quote.
But it is extraordinary, or ordinary people put in extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
That's the mark of a hero. Every hero throughout history is that way. Right? So here on the Suffering Podcast, those quote unquote ordinary people put in extraordinary circumstances and overcoming those circumstances, they're all heroes to me.
Yeah, I would agree. And it, you know, as we travel down season 4, this event that you couldn't imagine comes at you May 9th, and you're maybe not an ordinary person because you had a platform a little bit different, but then you get hit with this tremendous loss of your partner, and you dealt with it up front. You were very candid about it, and you even mentioned it on tonight's Instagram Live. And
because I failed him.
well, that's the part that sticks out with me. And if you don't mind, with my life insurance up to date, I'm gonna have a different opinion. It's not gonna be one that's completely negative. But when you look back, and as we sit here now, if you could hear a voice from Mike, do you think that he would forgive you, or he would characterize what you did as a failure?
Mike, as he sat at the end, no. Because he was just in such a negative frame of mind. So as he sat at the end, I would probably say no, because at the end, he couldn't get out of his own way. And he was starting to become very resentful of things that I was doing outside. You know, we had the book launch and I knew it, but I had always given Mike all the opportunities in the beginning, all the opportunities that I was provided. When I went on a show, first outside podcast I ever did was Joe Cozo's show out in Long Island. And I said, I told him, Mike, I'm going out to do this Joe Cozo show. Well, should I come with you? And I called Joe and I said, Joe goes, no, I'll do one at a time. I'll do the other one later. I said, okay. I said, all right, Mike, he's going to record you later. I'm not driving out to Comac, Long Island. I was like, well, I don't know what to do. And there were several of those where I set Mike up for shows and he never went. I have a different theory on this show. It's a divide and conquer type of theory. What's good and I always knew, because of the way my police career ended, never put all your eggs in one basket. Because one day, I've said this from the beginning, one day this show's going to end.
Yeah.
And if I am nothing but the show and the show's over, then by default, I am nothing. So what I started to do was build my own personal brand in tandem with the show. And I was trying to get Mike to do the same thing. His initial Instagram handle was Dented Ace.
Yeah.
I said, Mike, you got to put your name, man. They got to know who you are. Trying to clean up his social media, stuff like that. And I said, you don't understand. Like, if you go out and do these things, that's good for the show because it'll resonate back to the show. If they like what they're hearing from you, it's going to come back to the show and we're going to grow. And that's how we're going to grow. And that's how I always looked at it. It wasn't look at me or I'm doing better things. It wasn't that. It was all for the hopes of trying to make this thing grow. Mike didn't get that. And it was hard for me to sit there and watch. But at some point, I had to let go. I had two choices. It's either I battle him or I accept him for what he is.
Yeah.
I chose a long time ago to accept him for what he was. Because Mike was great. Let me explain something.
Absolutely.
Mike was a great guy. All right, he's my best friend. And if you can't accept your best friends, they're not your best friends. For all their blessings and all of their faults. But at the end of his life, Mike was so negative and he was so jaded and he was so resentful because I would hear it in the comments. Our last go round was at the Anti-Terrorism Council Symposium. This coin right here, the tall one there.
Yeah, it's a great coin.
In New York City at Ground Zero, and I don't know where they got this. They didn't get this from me. They introduced me as the host of the Suffering Podcast, and they introduced Mike as the co-host. That's how they did it. While Mike was on stage, he made a comment, and I knew it bothered him. It bothered him. Mike always saw the show as him and I, and it is. Yeah. He's 100% correct. But I'm also Kevin Donaldson, and he is also Mike Falaice. He always wanted us to just stay together and join together. But,
it's part of that development maybe too. Development has to happen on all sides.
So Pastor Adam, my pastor, Adam Burt, he said something right after Mike died to me that changed the way I thought a little bit. So we had Adam in on, it was like episode 16 or 18 or something, between 16 and 18. He goes, I met you guys at both the same, and he held his hands up. He goes, I met you guys at both the same level. And he goes, Kevin, you found your faith. And Mike, and this is what I was watching. And as you found your faith and started to get comfortable in your own skin again, I saw you two getting further and further apart. And I said, yes, but, Mike was on such a downward spiral that I don't know what would have brought him back up.
So under the premise that the forgiveness, for what you characterize as a failure, that forgiveness is probably there, right? Do you feel that it seems like the next step is the self-forgiveness? Do you feel that that's on the horizon somewhere?
So if you believe in any type of afterlife, you believe that Mike is in a better place. You have to. It's just what makes sense. So if Mike is in a better place where he's free from all those prior feelings, that Mike, I believe, would have forgiveness for me and truly look beyond and see what I was trying to do for both of us.
Yeah.
The hardest person in the world for me to forgive is myself. That's the part where I'll get there. I'll get there one day.
Yeah.
But in the same time, I never forget. I never forget what that felt like when I got that call at 3:30 in the morning on May 10th.
Mm-hmm.
I remember breaking down in my garage. I remember the first person I called was his brother Frank, and breaking down, and I was inconsolable. I went up, I woke my wife up, and I said, Mike killed himself, and I'm in tears. I then did, so this is very strange. When I got home from my shooting, first thing I did when I got home in the morning, I went out for a run, trying to clear my head.
Mm-hmm.
I had just heard my best friend killed himself, and I went out for a run. In the dark, alone. It's a little chilly. And I could hardly breathe because I was crying so hard. And I was in disbelief, but I'm sitting there and I'm talking to God, and I'm like, why? Like, what? I didn't even know what to say. It came so out of left field. But then in hindsight, hindsight's always 20/20. You're like, oh yeah, this and then this and then this and then this. And that's where the failure comes in, right? I get myself together that morning. I tell my kids, because my kids Mike was over my house for 2 years.
Yeah.
Every Saturday. My dog, my dog Mandy, he would come in and Mandy would go crazy over him. My kids would say hello. And so I had to tell them. I didn't tell them what he did. I said, Mike passed away. I said, Daddy's going to be a little off.
Yeah.
I went to work because, again, the worst thing in the world for me would be to sit home, because then the auto mind does the devil's work.
And you ruminate.
Right. So I went to work, and I remember my boss was in there, and I said it with tears in my eyes. And I knew that day I had to put out a message to all the people who supported us for so long. And I did an Instagram live.
Heart-wrenching.
It was a tough Instagram live to do. But I had to wait. So it wasn't purposeful that I waited. His father hadn't been told. And I had to wait for his father to be told in case I didn't want him to get a random phone call. Hey, Frank, I don't ever want to live through that again. So that's why I make that mission, and I make that, like Bobby says, that proverbial pain in the ass, that more proactive person. I should have been more proactive with him. I can't be more proactive with him. So I better make sure that moving forward in the future that I am more proactive, because that's the only way this is going to work.
So you had that suffering, right? That's something, I mean, that's next level.
It was painful.
You have your next one. 2 questions, actually, or it's a 2-part question. First, was there any thought in your mind about giving up at that time?
No. That's the one thing that didn't creep in. That, especially the days afterwards. The funeral, you always try to get through the funeral. You always try, you got to be there for the funeral. You got to try to have some sort of semblance of strength. But what it did for me, and I've said this many times, it widened my peripheral vision to an area that I have never seen before, because I have total recall. I have full knowledge. I was the last person to see him. We recorded 183 in here with Seth Gale. We went out in the parking lot. I know where we parked. I know exactly what he said to me. I know what happened when he left. I know who he tried to call, right? And I know the good and bad that Mike was doing in the last days of his life. And I see the carnage that this whole situation has created. The carnage is unlike anybody's ever seen. That and that alone. So I was where Mike ultimately succeeded. I failed many times, but Mike succeeded. And I never saw what could happen when somebody does this. And I'm sure Mike never saw that. Because if he did, then there's no way he would have done it. There's no way in the world.
You know, it's tough to look beyond yourself at that point, right? To see what the fallout and the chaos is going to be. But now you have this, and in true fashion for the podcast and everything else, you embraced it. And you've turned that into something. You didn't give up. And I remember the next day, like there was a business meeting that I had to attend, and I said, "Do you want me to cancel?" And without a thought, you said, "Absolutely not." So now this other challenge that you never could have foreseen, do you feel that suffering, or how that next level of suffering factors in, makes you perhaps improves you as a person and as a podcaster?
So one thing I was very conscious of is I was not going to do anything to numb this. I had to sit there and I had to feel every last bit of it. As hard as it was, as painful as it was, as many tears that came out of my eyes, I had to sit there and I had to feel it. The podcast wasn't really in the forefront of my mind in the first couple of days. Dealing with all the rest of the stuff. I was on the phone all day. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm neglecting my wife who just lost her father. And that was a whole tough thing for us both to deal with because she needed me and I needed her, but we couldn't be there for each other because we both lost somebody that we care about. It's made me a stronger person, but a weaker person too. I am much, much more vulnerable. I put everything out. Like if I'm feeling a certain way, I put it out. I put it online. I put it out there. And the reason I put it out there is I want people to follow that lead because I truly believe in my heart of hearts that is the way to overcome suffering, to overcome pain, is to get it out. Do not store it in your body. You store it in your body, it's going to store somewhere where you don't want it to store. You're going to get fat. You're going to get drunk. You're mentally unstable. It's not healthy in any way, shape, or form. So I have to get it out. But when it was time to start thinking about the future of the show, I had friends calling me and say, "Hey, look, this might be really bad for the show. This could be the end of the show." And I understand because we're both fighting for mental health amongst everybody else in here. He's struggling the most amongst everybody, which is kind of why the failure feels that way. But I had to get back up on the horse. So that night of the funeral, the Suffering Podcast welcomes our newest sponsor, Keto Revive. Ketamine infusions that are personalized, accessible, and holistic. Proven treatments for post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, chronic pain, neuropathic pain, and so much more. Keto Revive is physician-operated with customized treatments tailored to you and an outstanding support system. Keto Revive offers first responder special discounts. So try something new. Proven treatments. Located in Wyckoff, New Jersey. To find out more, visit Keto Revive at ketorevive.com. Let's start healing today. Mm-hmm. We had Suzanne Chabot.
Yep.
Suzanne Chabot. And I felt so bad for this girl. And I've actually invited her back because I was like, I told her. And she said, "Do you want me to cancel?" Because she was traveling from Connecticut. "Do you want me to cancel?" And I was like, "No, I have to. I got to do this. I got to do this." I didn't know how I was going to react. The funeral was that day. We were recording at night. I didn't know how I was going to react coming in here. And I spent a minute in here alone. And I tried to do it without prying eyes. I just had to sit in here alone. And I remember just crying, just right here. I was just crying. And then I did an Instagram Live. I had to snap out of it.
Yeah.
I had my own little pity party. Now I have to move forward. And it's kind of the same concept that I took with the show. I can't do anything about this. All I can do is change the future for somebody else, somebody who might be where he is. So I had to do it. Now, thankfully, and I'm so grateful because there were people in here, Mark and Nick and you, and Kathy was here, and Andrew was here, and was anybody else here?
I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Truly emotional moment. It was off camera, a lot of it, but it was a crescendo of emotions.
I remember finishing that up, and I was off. I was 100% off, and Mike DePalma. So Mike DePalma sat in with me.
That's right.
And Mike sort of held my hand. Like, that's why Mike was there. Mike sort of held my hand. I walked. We finished recording. I ran out and into the bathroom because I didn't want anybody to see me break down.
Yeah.
Because I broke down.
And now after that, you've gone full force. I'm not saying without skipping a beat or taking time for yourself, but now we've seen episodes, we've seen more guests, we've seen, great response. Your channel is now up over 17,000 subscribers. A recent video, over 23,000 views, tons of likes coming in. How do you sort of mesh that all together with the suffering? And now, arguably you would say that the podcast and the platform is on the upswing.
I just really wish Mike was here to enjoy this. This is something that we built for a very long time, since February of 2021. And I wish he was here to see it. Mike became the sacrificial lamb as a springboard in order to elevate. So here's the way I see it. So Mike sacrificed himself to elevate the show to a new height.
The Not Today movement.
The Not Today movement, and I end everything with Not Today.
And we finally get to see it on your arm because you're sitting in the seat. Normally it's facing this way, but tonight people get to see it on the T-shirt on the host himself.
And everybody else, listen, our T-shirt vendor, I told him put it on the left sleeve because the guest isn't going to wear it, but ends up on the right sleeve, which means you don't always get what you want.
So as we come to the end of this thing, normally there's some kind of plug, or is there anything that's kind of going on, or maybe you can cue in the audience as to what they should expect in season 5.
Season 5, it's not business. It's never business as usual. We have a lot of guests lined up. We have some returning guests coming in. It's taking this message and moving it forward. That's all. It's always one foot in front of the other, right? Sometimes that next step is difficult. I put out a post recently about somebody with bare feet walking on glass.
Yeah, great post.
And it's no matter how painful it is, you just have to keep moving forward because that glass isn't going to be on the floor forever. And with this show, that's all I do, man. I just keep moving forward. What way can we improve this stuff? We just changed the way that we air our shows. What else can we do when we get ourselves out there? What other opportunities are we going to have to reach people who really need to hear that voice? And one day it's going to end. I don't know, and I don't think it's anytime soon.
Not at this rate, it seems.
I enjoy this. It's my form of therapy. It's my education. So this podcast has given me the best education, and I have graduate degrees. I have all that stuff. This show has given me the greatest education I could ever have in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, through the help of our generous sponsors, it's been a free not a free education because I work my ass off.
For
but
sure.
Monetarily, it hasn't cost anything.
Yeah.
So.
And the message is out there and people seem to be enjoying it.
Yeah.
As you know, as you articulately put, every episode, we're getting to the end of this thing and the suffering of season 4. So I think we both have things that we learned, but I'll kick it over to you. What What are some of the things that we learned tonight?
I think always make forward progress. See your current position and always take one step forward. Those steps don't have to be gigantic. Those steps can be small. But as long as you're moving forward, and there's going to be times where you have to take a step back and you have to digress a little bit, but that shouldn't stop you from keep continually moving forward. As long as you're making, at the end of the year, as long as you can say, I'm better than I was last year, even on a smaller scale, I'm better than I was yesterday. Yesterday, I fell a little bit, but I'm better than I was yesterday. That's the biggest lesson out of all this show, not just season 4, all of this show. And if you look the way this show has progressed, we started out with 10 challenge coins. Now,
we're going to need another display pretty soon. Getting back to it, CICD, constant improvement, constant development. And that's that couldn't be better said by you. So I have 2 things, and I'll get my 2 things out of the way quick.
No, we'll go back and forth.
Okay.
All right.
So I'll do mine. True friends shit their pants. And you be there for them.
Yep.
So listen, I don't envy that phone call, but if you ever got to make it, I'm there for you, brother. And I'll bring a pack of wipes and a shovel just in case there's a body too.
Well, I prefer if you go out in the backyard and bury it. So out of 213 episodes, over 200 guests, I realized that while I never really had a good family growing up, and aside from my personal family, which is my primary, they're always going to be my primary.
Yeah.
I have a very, very big extended family who I consider very dear friends who they can call on me, I can call on them. And I think out of over 200 guests, I probably keep in contact with probably 90% of them. And the ones that I don't keep in contact with, it's not because I don't like them. It's just we lose contact. That's all.
Sure. It just happens.
Yeah.
It shows a lot of the back end work, hard work, production stuff, all the videos, the social media clips, like a lot of hard work goes into this that people don't see. But hopefully
it's probably about 30 or 40 hours a week, easy.
And you're doing the lion's share of it. So believe me, I'm not trying to steal anything there. Another thing I learned is when you talked about Rogan, and you've heard this before, and you have a perfect response for it. And people say, hey, you can be the next Joe Rogan. And your response, I love it every time, is we just want to be the next us.
There's only one Joe Rogan.
There's only one. And why would you want to just carbon copy it? That's like being a cover band. Cover bands are great, but they fall out of fame. So I learned be the next you.
So Andrew put this for me. When we first went in this studio, Andrew said something to me. His studio looks different than a lot of studios. And he goes, I'm not going to get the Joe Rogan starter kit. It's not a knock on Joe Rogan.
No.
But that's Joe Rogan.
That's his
thing.
That's
his thing. I don't want the Joe Rogan starter kit. And he's right. He's 100% correct. I want to be different. I want to do things that nobody's doing. I want to be that innovator.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Stockton Rush type of innovation, but I want to be that innovator. The Stockton Rush, that's the Ocean Gate submersible, just so everybody knows they're still down by the Titanic right now checking it out.
Yes, tore the scab off of that one.
Yeah. Well, it's been gone for a while. You got any more?
Well, I would say if just to piggyback off what you said, if there's the mission and the message, the money will come. Like, why copy somebody else? You're doing it the right way, your way. And if it rises to the top, it'll happen organically.
That's an Indian Larry thing. So do you remember who Indian Larry was? He was a motorcycle builder.
I don't.
So he robbed a bank when he was younger, did a bunch of time in prison, worked out of Brooklyn, New York. Okay. And, but he was really good at welding. He was fabricating. He was just this amazing fabricator. It was like the greatest biker build off or something. One of those Discovery shows. He's on there. And he said, if you do what you love, the money will follow. It's his exact quote. I never forgot that. Now, in 2005, I think it was 2005, Indian Larry used to do this thing where he'd stand on his bike and ride it, standing up. No helmet. It's a recipe for disaster. And sure enough, he fell off and he traumatic brain injury and died.
Yeah.
The year he died, I went to the New York bike show at the Javits Center, and there was his bike, Chain of Fools. So Chain of Fools.
Wow.
Chain of Fools, the frame was made out of welded chain.
That's
and,
cool.
And chromed. It was a rider too. So, most of these bike guys, they build bikes that are unrideable.
Yeah.
Somebody who's been riding motorcycles their entire life. It was a bobber style with I think it was a Huggy Bear front end. No, it wasn't a Huggy Bear front end. They were more raked out.
Yeah.
Springer front end. It was gorgeous. I mean, absolutely stunning. And there was the guy on the show. I'm sitting there talking to the guy on the show who built it with him. I remember him from the show. And I watched that bike getting built. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, damn, man, there was never a truer statement in the world.
Yeah.
That bike's priceless. And this is from an ex-convict who was just a good fabricator.
Yeah. He lived it out.
Mm-hmm.
Did it his way, as they say.
That's right.
Right. I'm going to leave the most of all, what we've learned most of all from the Suffering of Season 4. I'm going to kick it over where it deserves to be with the host.
I'm going to leave this where I began it. Years ago, I was on an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
I walk into a bookstore. And on the book, it's surviving worst case scenarios that I was going to read on the plane. This is before cell phones, before, everybody had electronic devices. And I'm on the plane, and one of the things that comes up is how to survive a prairie fire. I live in New Jersey. There are no prairies in New Jersey. But it stuck to me how you do it, because human instinct is to run away from danger and to try to survive. But with a prairie fire, if you run away from it, it's this big wall of flame coming at you. If you run away from it, it's just growing, growing, and growing until it's going to catch you, because they're fast, and it's going to consume you, and you're going to die. When all you had to do was suck it up, run straight into that flame, and you're going to get through to the other side. You're going to be a little charred. You're going to be a little scarred, but you're going to be alive. So life is a lot like that. When you have suffering, when you have pain, don't run away from it, because it'll catch you. It'll catch you at the most inopportune time. And these are words that I live by. When I have pain, I run straight towards it, and I deal with it, because that's the only way you're going to get through it and get to the other side alive.
That might be your definition of a hero. And I stole this from somebody else, and people that look back on the other episodes, I encourage them to take a look at the mugs for each episode, because there's little Easter eggs there. And for tonight's episode on my mug, I put "Make your mess your message." And you've executed that perfectly, in my opinion.
Oh, I'm still a mess. I'm still a mess, 100%.
Well, the pants thing, we'll see how sloppy the shit is. That one.
They just recently, I want to end it with this.
Sure.
They just recently discovered, within the last 10 years, a Leonardo da Vinci, an unfinished Leonardo da Vinci. He only painted, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 paintings, and most of those paintings, believe it or not, are unfinished.
Wow.
But this particular one was more unfinished than the rest. And if you look at a Leonardo da Vinci unfinished painting, you're going to be like, that doesn't even make sense. I don't understand, because he wasn't done with the vision. It doesn't make sense until the end. We're all works in progress, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And while we're working through that progress, none of us make sense.
Yeah.
But when we're finished, when we're at the end, hopefully we have that masterpiece that's fully complete, and we're ready to move on to the next step.
Well, I want to thank you, Kevin. I think this is a very special episode, and kudos to you for stepping out of your comfort zone and sitting in the hot seat, as they say.
I'll be expecting those parting gifts.
Yes, absolutely. In our green room. Andrew, we need a green room, by the way.
Thank you, Tom, for taking over the host spot. That's amazing. You did a great job. I know it's a big ask.
It's your seat always, and your gratitude is that you farted in it before the episode started.
Oh, several times, not just once.
So I think that's going to do it for this episode.
I did not shit my pants on that, so just so you know.
Well, there's still time to go.
All right, everybody. So listen, don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount. Follow us on all social media. That's LinkedIn, Facebook, Clapper, X, OnlyFans. Follow Tom at the Tom Flynn. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. And of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. And we will see you next on season 5. And that's going to do it for season 4. We had our highs this season. We had our lows this season. And it was a big struggle to try to carry on. But we're going to do it. We're committed to doing this. And we're here because of our family on the other end of this camera. So we appreciate you. Stay tuned. Season 5 is right around the corner.